Hello everyone and welcome to TechNect. This is the second part of the discussion that Onur and I had about this year 2020 that is ending. Some trigger warnings before we start. We will be discussing some things in relation to femicides or feminicides, domestic violence, especially against women and children. We will mention rape and other types of violence against women. And we will discuss some domestic and public struggles of the LGBT community during the pandemic. So, without further ado, let's get on with the show. So, our next thing that we thought it would be interesting to check is how this pandemic had affected different groups in a different way. So there has been many articles talking about how since the pandemic started, cases of domestic violence had increased, and against mostly women and children, but also against the LGBTQ community. And all like these groups has been affected differently. It's not like men hasn't been affected, but it is a different types of effect that it has the pandemic had. And especially in Latin America, there has been this other pandemic, as has been said in an article that I was reading, and actually quite a number of articles that I've been reading, and it's this other pandemic that it's called femicides or feminicides. And this is basically the term, maybe I'm not sure if all our listeners are aware of these terms, but these two terms, femicides and feminicides, are terms that are connected or explain the type of violence and the type of deaths and murders of particularly women, of course, women's femicides, but it is very specific for issues that has to do with female problems. So, for example, domestic violence usually is a male partner against the female partner, and it has so many levels of violence. And the feminicides, of course, it's end in homicide of a woman, but it also enclose so many other different types of ways of being killed. For example, rape, and that is also connected. If the rape ends in a homicide, it connects to a feminicide, and so many different ones. But this is just a general term for that. And so we have seen this a lot in Latin America, and this, like I said, this term is coined especially in Latin America, but I've seen recently other countries that has been starting to use this term. I think it's because it is a worldwide problem. It's not like a woman just got killed because whatever. A woman got killed because she was a woman. It's not just like, oh, I went out and I got stabbed because whatever. No, it's particularly for violence against women. So this has been a pandemic as well in Latin America. I can't remember right now the numbers of the number of feminicides in Latin America, but I will put a link of a report that we found about it, and it's quite horrible, the numbers. Especially, I think it's in Brazil and in Mexico, the numbers of feminicide is just off the roof. during this pandemic. And that is another thing. I mean, imagine not only being uh, trapped because, you know, a, a pandemic, a worldwide thing, but also being trapped with an abuser, right? Like a person that actually is a threat to you or to your children. Um, and this is this is something that it's not cool to happen. And for the part of the LGBT community, um, it's that they also have been hit in a different way by this, because then they're usually, before we can get out of the house to sort of like escape this type of treatment or this type of toxic environments. But with the pandemic and them being inside all the time, this is something that it is very concerning as
Yeah,
well. And so many LGBTQ young, especially young people, um, has been, you know, super affected by the pandemic in a different way. They got, you know, discrimination things in their neighborhoods or in their houses. Uh, they have been hit as well, like abused. I mean, so many different things. So maybe we can open
yeah,
now. So let's do the
exactly.
discussion.
Yeah, in this regard, thinking of COVID, that this hashtag stay home, stay at home is maybe safety for some people, but it is a horror and violence. It's a fear for many people. It's stay home is not always as easy,
Mm,
especially if you are locked in a home that you are targeted by violence constantly. It's just, home is not safe all the time. So we need to acknowledge this, and that is, as you say, it is with the pandemic more intensified cases of violence against women, violence against LGBTQ people. Uh, this is, yes, this is a growing situation, and as you bring up Latin America, different cases, I have to mention also Turkey, which has the highest. I hate like talking about these kind of numbers, but it's the highest number of uh, femicides in OECD countries, and if I'm not wrong, also in Europe. So Turkey has a, yeah, very growing, every year growing number of femicides and domestic violence. And these are also just, these numbers are the numbers we know and we hear about. Sometimes
exactly.
there are, I think this is like the, you know, the iceberg, the scene. We just see a tip point, but we don't see many of the domestic violence women are exposed to, or LGBT people, because they can fear, they can be scared. It is very easy to be scared when you are targeted by a person who is
Hmm.
violating you, you know. And and I'm sure, unfortunately, these numbers are much higher than we officially know, which makes the scene even worse, even much worse. And in that regard, yes, pandemic is already challenging people psychologically also, and now also you are targeted by violence, physical or psychological.
Mm,
I think we shouldn't also forget here, yes, physical violence is the top issue, but also psychological violence many people are exposed to from their partners or from their families, fathers, mothers,
mhm,
or siblings. And that is a big issue which is difficult to solve. But then there are some digital solidarities, obviously, people are able to make. I was able to observe some for LGBT people that they have been at least, you know, holding some parties, I don't know, some support groups, some events like pride events and things that people would feel less lonely, or even they would be feeling under pressure, they can at least see there are other people in their situation so they can connect. So this is how I think digital became a important again. It's not an escape spot, but it is an alternative that people can breathe. But there are obviously so many other people who cannot even access to these spaces because of this pressure, violence, or yeah, they're LGBTQ, they had to hide their identity or sexual orientation, or they are just not so allowed to use internet or access to these places. So that is a very big issue and alarming. It has already been an alarming issue, but with the pandemic, it became even more complex.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And also about what you were saying about these digital platforms, I was seeing a few months ago, sort of like, I don't know how to explain it, but it was sort of like when you were talking with a person that you can say with your hands if you were being abused at home without saying it. So like with their hands, I think it was something like this. They sort of like did some hand gesture to show the person on the other side of the screen that she, in this case, it was a woman doing this, that she was being in a situation which needed help. And I'm not quite sure how spread this was, but it was made in English and it reached to me. Maybe because I also follow a lot of people, English speakers people, but in any case, I hope that this has reached a lot, and so like this type of ways of helping each other as well has been sort of like a good thing. What you were saying as well, like sort of like having some sort of a community or someone to communicate with in these types of cases. And particularly in Colombia, there's a hotline that is called the Purple Line, and the reports of the Purple Line has been that it has increased. I'm sorry, it has increased, I think, something like 400% of the calls that they got regularly. So and I mean, it's not like they something has been done in terms of legally this person has been, you know, the abusers have been taken away or anything, but at least they were sort of like this support line for people that actually needed to talk with someone and to you know to need at least to vent, at least to be heard. And yeah, so many other of these support lines had been in place. And I know of this in Colombia, but I know that there are others. I think it's the Pink Line in Peru. I think it's also the Pink Line in Mexico. I'm not sure of that. But in different countries, at least in Latin America, the ones that I know, they had implemented these support lines because they knew sort of like how difficult these times might be for so many women and so many other people that might be at risk in inside their homes, which we know that most of the these horrible things that happen, you know, femicides happen inside the houses, which is just a horrible note to be taking of. But yeah, but also, and I was reading an article about Kenya because like while I was checking some of the articles about the LGBT community and how they've been sort of like hit by the pandemic, I found this one about the situation in Kenya, and it's quite concerning. I, of course, I'm not from Kenya. I don't know how it is there, but at least the article was explaining how so like dangerous for them is for the LGBT community is because if I believe it's illegal in Kenya, so that also puts another level of pressure, along with the pandemic, along with being inside with persons that might be hurt you. Now, on top of that, if you put the so like the layer of illegality, that
And
is
you have the
something.
state violence added on top of that.
Exactly.
Because then even state cannot, I mean, in many cases state don't protect you, even though it's legal, but here you are punishable also.
Exactly.
And this is
Exactly.
obviously the illegality of LGBT rights have been, I think it's going in a reverse situation now. This progress of LGBT rights is turning to a point, had been turning at least, to a point that there are even now new limitations, further violations. That is so, and now the pandemic and people are stuck at home. These are challenging times, but also there are some good parts. To start with, when I think of, I mean, at least from a transnational perspective, there have been certain initiatives. For example, Istanbul Convention was one of them, which was signed in Istanbul in Turkey. And this was from the United Nations, and the aim is to protect, to empower women and LGBT people and impose new laws against violence, and also acknowledging the structural change that are needed to be made. So it's pointing out the roots of the problems. I think it's a very good convention that is pointing important, like points that will solve many issues. But Turkey, for example, it is Istanbul Convention. So it's in Turkey. It was signed, and Turkey was the first country to sign this. I think it was, if I'm not wrong, 2011. And Turkey has a big problem with femicides and LGBTQ rights. And then, yeah, Turkey signed this, but after a while, the parliament, they never implemented any laws regarding Istanbul Convention. So also the transnational part of this is very important if we are talking about violence against women and LGBT people, and how these kind of uh, international agreements can be very ineffective as well. Like a country signs, that country which has its name on the convention doesn't implement law, and it is even considering to withdraw from it. And there, everybody knows we have a huge problem with violence against women, and women are dying every day almost. And then there is nothing made by the government. Obviously, this is another big discussion that is going to ideologically, obviously, this misogynist discourse being reproduced in this, again, right-wing governments, how they are ruled by this heteropatriarchal men who are, it's not in their interests to support women's rights or LGBT rights. And this is becoming more and more, have been becoming a global phenomenon in many countries. But that is another problem that I just wanted to mention, because these transnational spaces and actions can be also ineffective. And that is very disturbing to see.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, we obviously have the most importantly grassroots movements, which have been also hampered by coronavirus. They continue in the digital platform, so we cannot say, oh, this all stopped. But for example, we had Lastesis just short before the pandemic came, which was obviously against violence against women, which was a transnational movement. Yes, started in Chile, but then traveled to different countries. We saw some examples in like protests, even in Sweden. We had in Turkey, even in the parliament, which denied to implement Istanbul Convention. I mean, obviously not the whole parliament, but the government was against it. And then, yes, this is, and last thesis was, I think, very effective in many ways to raising the issue. But then pandemic and kind of stopped.
Mm.
So yeah.
Yeah, actually, the pandemic had put so many struggles for for these groups, which I am part of because I'm a woman. But it had put so much so like pressure, and unnecessary uh, things on top of being, concerned about a global pandemic. This yeah the situation with violence, with discrimination, the state being, horrible. I mean, and then in so many ways the pandemic put a stop on so many different movements that has been going on. But also, strangely, or maybe not strangely, but the pandemic certainly put a stop on many things, but people didn't just stay quiet. After a certain point, people just, you know what, this is it. We're not taking this anymore. And I think we have discussed this in our last episode with Maya, um, about like these protests, for example, the Black Lives Matter, and then after that, we recorded that in June, so that happened a while. But after that, so many other protests have been happening, and now, for example, and something that is, I think, it's super good, it's that in Chile they had now they're doing a new constitution, which is historic because their constitution was written when Pinochet was there and he was a dictator, and he just messed up with that country. And so now that they are starting to write a new constitution, a new thing from scratch, it is super good. And it happened during this pandemic situation, right? And also, and also what happened with in Colombia as well, people starting to, you know, what's happening with this police brutality, and also people starting to rise up. In Peru, they had like 3 or 4 presidents in like 3 days. They were like, this isn't good, change it, we need more. And people, young people, were super, on top of it.
Yeah.
And everyone was like wearing masks and everything, but they were still rioting. So I think some things good has been there. And also in the 25th of November, which is the International Day of Violence against women, this I mean, one thing happened there, and it was like Maradona died, and that also sort of like tempered with the movement. But still, people, and especially women, they were super on top of the mobilization and doing, even there's a new song this year as well. Last year we had Las Tesis and Un Violador en Tu Camino, and this year we had a different one. So I think, so like other good things has been happening. It's just that we also
This
had
is
it super rough.
yeah, I mean, but this point you mentioned is very important because it is showing, because one criticism or fear about obviously these kind of social movements is their fragility, that they are to come together very quickly and then disintegrate because they come easily together on social media, but then they don't continue, right? They end. And for example, Zeynep Tüfekçi, techno-sociologist, she discusses this fragility of social movements in her book Twitter and Tear Gas, which is, I think, an amazing book, which is portraying these networked movements and protests taking place both online and offline, and how they are sustained and how they are challenged by obviously these kind of quick endings and temporalities. It's an amazing book, and it has very good approaches. But also, for example, you talked about Chile and the new constitution. And I'm sure we cannot deny the effect of justice probably in this or these movements. And I think that movement cultures are fed, are like, supported by these movements. So yes, one movement emerges and ends, but it leaves a culture, a movement culture that continues. Then it inspires new struggles, new movements, or another movement in the same struggle, That is, I think, very important point. It just doesn't go away. It stays there. It affects. We also saw this during Gezi protests in Turkey. Yes, it ended at some point, but it's how do you say, protest strategies, its discourses stayed with people. So it becomes like a genealogy of struggle, then you don't forget about this, but you integrate this to your new protests or new civil disobedience, collective action. I think that is very important part of these moments. That's why yes, pandemic put many things on hold, but it doesn't mean these struggles ended. People find new ways and taking those struggles with them to continue. So yeah, it just, I think, makes people even more creative in times to still express themselves and to sustain with their movement.
Yeah, totally.
So we can be maybe more how do you say that? Not pessimistic, but optimistic.
Actually, I was going to say that before we end this episode, I think it's important to also note the good things that happen in this year,
Yes.
which we can.
What happened?
No, I mean, so
Oh,
many
yes.
good things happen. Even though we had a really rough year. For example, in Chile, they have a new constitution, or like they're building a new constitution. In Argentina, for example, they're one step closer to legalize abortion, for example. Two women won the Nobel Prize of chemistry, and then
Yeah.
I mean, and also we're closer to like space exploration. I mean, some good things, right?
Yes,
Some good
of
things
course.
happened, and I really hope that next year it's better. I really
Same.
hope so, because this year has been super rough, and mentally, emotionally, physically. I think we had enough for a year of things that happens.
Yeah, it was like 5 years in 1 year. For me,
Oh,
like 10 years in 1 year.
Trump is out of office as well, so that's
Oh yeah,
another
that's also good
thing,
news.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, some things we can
Yeah,
look forward to.
definitely.
And also, well, I know that right now we're sort of like ending the year with a new mutation of the
New
corona,
strain. Yeah.
but let's hope that the vaccines that they already have sort of like can combat that new batch of
Yes.
coronavirus, so we don't have to
Yes.
be as locked down as we have been this year.
Yes. Yes. We just need to be more patient,
Yeah,
and support each other and spread some love
yeah,
before we end
yeah,
these difficult times.
and spread more love, more compassion, more empathy, and to really hope and try to help the people in need. For example, if we see or if we hear that a woman is having a hard time, if it's our neighbor or something, call the police, try to reach out, try to help, as well with any person, because we're all having it bad, but especially with groups that might be more marginalized or might be more vulnerable to some of these horrible things. So yeah, but
Yes.
I think we are now sort of like over 1 hour of
Yes.
talking.
So
But
maybe
yeah, what else would you like to say before
no,
we?
I think with this note you made, we can just end. We covered this year in a way some central issues, and hopefully with our hope to have a better year next year, which will be 2021. So I wish, and we wish everyone a great new year, happy new year, and see you next time.
Yeah, happy New Year, feliz año nuevo. That is in
Mutlu
Spanish.
yıllar in Turkish.
Yeah. So
Bye.
see you everyone. Bye bye. Thank you everyone for listening to this episode. As always, we really hope you liked it. And we only wanted you to know that we now have a new website, and it's called technactcluster.com. So you can find us there. It is brand new. Onur and I have been working on it, and it's we hope you like it. And of course, follow us on Facebook if we haven't done that already. And also for you to know that we have a YouTube channel now. We put the link in the description box. Make sure to follow us. We will have more content there. So yeah, that's the only thing that we wanted to say. See you.